Freedom to me is true agency and autonomy. It's the ability to move through this world without the systems of oppression that dictate and govern who you get to be, what access you have, what resources are at your disposal.
I think of freedom as acceptance, whether that is self-acceptance or freedom of expression.
Freedom is being able to walk around, not be judged by the color of your skin.
Freedom to give my children what they need to be most successful and watch them have the freedom of choice.
To sort of rise to their potential, to find fairness in a nation, and to ultimately make sure that they've passed that freedom down to their families.
We are all created equal.
Freedom is a continuum, and we have to continually struggle to get to higher and higher levels of freedom.
I can go wherever I want to go, do whatever I want to do in order to be anything I want to be.
The simple joys of I am free and I am setting up shop here and no one can tell me I can't.
When we started to conceptualize the Freedom Center, there were a lot of issues, a lot of racial turmoil in the community.
Ohio and Kentucky and Indiana have been hotbeds for the Klan.
The KKK put a cross on our Fountain Square, which is the center of our city. The owner of the Cincinnati Reds making racial remarks.
Making a statement pertaining to she would rather have a trained monkey than one of those pertaining to black managers. And I think one just dug herself a very deep hole.
The big challenge was how can the Freedom Center be put together in this tumultuous environment?
I knew full well we had issues that had to be dealt with. This was not an academic matter. I'd seen civil unrest in this city.
Many in the greater Cincinnati area wonder if the center will rid Cincinnati of some of its recent shackles of racial problems.
I knew we had work to do. It was an easy take for me to say, I'm on board. I'll do what I can.
What's so important about places like this is that you can count on it. You can count on its accuracy. You can count on its truth. And at a time when people are sort of making arguments that this history is false versus that, it's crucially important to have places like this that people can count on.
Jordan River, an old spiritual. I'm bound to cross Jordan River. I'm bound to cross. I'm bound to cross. I got one more river to cross.
Large bodies of water used to like freak me out. But I don't know, this right here, this one gives me a sense of pride, I think.
When I first would come here, I would go down and just dip my hand into the Ohio River as a symbolic gesture, but also to recognize that for so many people, being able to dip themselves in that river meant that freedom was just around the corner.
I just wonder, what did they go through? And not just my ancestors, because I don't think I'm ever gonna know exactly where they came from, but just anyone who crossed this looking for just a better future.
The African-American story was the quintessential American story. That if you want to understand American resiliency, American optimism, American spirituality, American hope, where better to look than this community? We have now had 14 million visitors, and it is the most diversely visited museum in the world. And that's so powerful to me.
As a storyteller, you're just exhuming the archives and so much is coming to light. There's not a lot of outward acknowledgement of the physicality in which the Freedom Center is built upon, being Little Africa and what that meant as an early Black settlement in the 1800s.
Right now, we are in a new permanent exhibition at the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center. The exhibition is called In This Place, and it talks about the significance of the ground that we're standing on right now. One of our goals for the gallery was bringing our exhibit and interpretation techniques into the present. We know that new generations of curious learners expect a more media-driven and interactive experience. So you can see around me, you have a lighting effect that sort of evokes the river. I'm looking at what's called the Kenyon Bar Collection, and this is a collection of photographs of every building in Cincinnati's West End that was torn down to make way for I-75, the highway, in 1959.
It displaced more than 25,000 Black families, businesses, schools, churches. And so you had a concentration of wealth that was beginning to be built just less than 100 years after emancipation. That Kenyon Bar neighborhood was destroyed. So was destroyed this pathway to generational wealth.
The Freedom Center was founded by a coalition of folks who wanted to mark the significance of this place on the Ohio River. Many historians believe that the Underground Railroad is the first collaborative, interracial, mass social justice movement in U.S. history.
There's no other place on this earth that actually has the origin story of freedom like the Freedom Center has.
We are in the historic Walnut Hills community of Cincinnati. It was at one point a Black middle-class community. I grew up in this community, and I really didn't know, I'm embarrassed to say, a lot of these things I didn't know until I started researching and studying it. And so now that I understand, it's amazing. And we're always finding new things. The church that we are sitting at now is the historic First Antioch Baptist Church. And it goes back to the 1880s. And right after the abolishment of enslavement in 1865, there were Black churches that began to spring up and support newly freed African Americans and offer things like education to help them find work and employment. We're going to turn right into the Harriet Beecher Stowe house. Harriet Beecher Stowe was a famous abolitionist and author. Her father was a well-known abolitionist pastor. He was known to be a radical. I call these grounds hallowed grounds because the people here were doing something so important for humanity, so important for the freedom movement, so important for the United States of America. People did not understand the brutality of slavery in the North. And so when her book came out, it went into such detail about the breakup of families, the brutality of enslavement, selling children down the river, and the beatings and the whippings displayed in Uncle Tom's Cabin, that it really brought a sort of national consciousness. It caused people to be concerned more about the institution of slavery. They were like, wow, we did not know it was that brutal, because the Southerners often portrayed it as a sort of necessary evil.
I knew as soon as I walked into this building that I could talk about the history that was never really formally told to me. I cried when I saw how they were placed on the ships. I cried when I saw this and know how they were put in these pens to be sold. I cried because my great-grandmother was the last in my ancestry history to be enslaved, and nobody wanted to talk about her. So all of those emotions came to me, and I realized that this is the place that I could release those emotions and talk to people about the history. And that's what I do. We're standing in front of a slave pen. This is an authentic building that we found in Maysville, Kentucky. It was owned by John W. Anderson. These are ankle shackles. So the man that shackled his ankle here would be shackled to the man standing next to him over here, and he could have anywhere from 40 to 60 people in this building. Women and children under 12 stayed on the first floor. Men that was over 12 was on the second floor. And as you can see, there are bars on the windows. This was a temporary holding pen until he had enough people to sell down south. I kind of cried to see how they would chain up people to be sold. And it's an ugly American history, but it's still America's history anyway. We have to tell the good with the bad. We have to tell the whole truth and not let anything slip by. And that's important, that our children know that we have empathy for the past so that we can have empathy for the future.
The Freedom Center is really important because it's a place that does evoke pain, but it also can start a healing process. Young Black folks, as myself, we don't know what we don't know.
All throughout high school and middle school, I felt like there was part of the story that was missing. I felt that Black history was treated as a historical footnote in a lot of my classes. And I knew that I wanted to learn that story, and I also wanted to tell it in a way that would make people want to listen and do something with what they learn.
I want to hear about my origins. And once you get hit with that, it's hard because you're essentially blindsided. You're like, oh, I didn't know about any of this. That's why it's necessary, because so many people just don't know, and they would never know if they didn't walk through these doors.
Most of the history that we've learned for school kind of grazed like the surface level of history, and I feel like they try to protect us from knowing like the deep and the dark and certain ugly events. So I definitely feel like the teen docent experience for me really helped me gain an understanding of connecting with other people and being able to have empathy for people that have gone through things like slavery, sex trade, etc. That was a really good opportunity to learn about that real history.
Okay, let's hit that magic button here and see what we get. Search. Now, what relation is Sam to you, Novella?
Grandfather.
Grandfather, born about 1873. Okay, I'm Richard Schneider, and I am the Family Search Coordinator here at the Freedom Center for Genealogy. So let's click on James and see what we can find out about your great-grandfather. Death record, that's probably for James. Let's see. No, it's for their son, Samuel.
Oh, really?
Want to take a look at the original?
Sure. So that was my grandfather.
Cerebral hemorrhage.
So, now see?
What's the story there?
He was lynched.
He was lynched. And they said cerebral hemorrhage. Of course, after he was lynched.
Yeah.
Contributory causes, influenza. My goodness. Cerebral hemorrhage, yeah. They made up a lot of things then to cover that up, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Every day, lives are changed here in the Family Search Center. We have people leaving here in tears, not because of any rude treatment by the volunteers, but because of the discoveries that are made about their family. Oh, there you go. You said Professor? There's Professor Jacobs, 1880. All kinds of discoveries when we do family research. But it's all part of the history, isn't it? I love helping people do their research here. We develop bonds with these people. We make these discoveries, and it just shrinks the world. It makes us realize the brotherhood of man and how much we have in common. It develops compassion. It helps me to understand things that I would not understand otherwise. Things like white privilege. I used to think that sounded like a negative word. Some white people are offended by that phrase, but I have learned that it covers much more than what we're accustomed to thinking. Most of our patrons are lucky if they can go back beyond 1870 when they do their genealogy, because that was the first year for a census in the United States in which African Americans were listed as people with names. Before that, they're usually on a slave schedule listed by gender, male or female, and age. Here's Sam back in the 1870 census. No, that's the first census.
Wow.
Where African Americans in this country appear as individuals with names.
Really?
I, on the other hand, am able to go back to Europe, back to the 1500s in many cases from my German ancestry. I don't have that middle passage between Africa and slavery that is lost to most African Americans, even if they do genealogy.
I do remember as a young kid, the Klan would come 2 or 3 times a year in a property that lived behind us. And when we saw the fire, we knew what was going on. By the time it got dark, we would all be in the house and we would be under the beds because they would come through the area shooting. The hatred and the racism was a reality back in the 50s. My mother died in childbirth with me because she had to go to a colored hospital that was 30 miles away. So she bled to death after giving birth to me. As a child, whenever I asked about enslavement, I was told, we don't want to talk about that. I'm 3 generations from enslavement. So that's how close it is. And so this is a history that most seniors are learning about. It helps us to grow as a community and as a country.
Things are better today, thank God. But we should have no illusion. And anybody who feels, well, we had a black president, Obama, things are pretty well settled. Now let's all settle down and not be worried about this. Wrong. So we got a lot of work to do. The marginalization of African Americans has been significant in so many dimensions. Housing, redlining, jobs, healthcare, education.
There's a push to eliminate public education. That comes from its roots in slavery. We only needed people to produce, not to be educated, not to be part of this higher class, to have any access to social mobility, because it is truly a system that is operating as it was designed to break people, not a broken system.
Let's not forget that after 1865, enslavement did not disappear. We have slavery today in the form of, for example, sex trafficking right here in the United States, but also there's traditional slavery. So the fight for freedom still continues today.
Human trafficking can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere. It happened to me at the age of 37. I was highly educated back in India, I had a good job. I was happily married. I had a wife and 2 boys when I came. My sons were 4 years and 7 years old. I got invited in the year 2003 on an H-1B visa, which is a work visa as a business development manager on a $75,000 salary per year plus benefits. It was all in black and white. I was manipulated, tricked, and trapped. And can you believe, friends, this happened in Cincinnati, Ohio.
I was acquired, adopted by a family who were not citizens of the United States. They were from El Salvador and from Honduras. And that's why I say the woman I believe to be my mom, because I would later learn that I didn't belong to them at all. The way that trauma works, childhood memories are not linear. So the fragmented memories that I do have are largely about torture and abuse. I went into States Care, which is the foster care system.
The day I landed, my trafficker, he tells me, oh, you got to take a bank loan. So he takes me to a bank and I just signed some documents in the cabin. It was all pre-planned, and within 5 minutes, there is a check in the name of Harold D'Souza, a 5-figure check. He removes a chit from his pocket and he just tells me, you owe me this money. Friends, it was not $20,000, it was not $40,000, it was much more. He made us work in a restaurant. Within 1 week, my wife and myself, we were working 14 hours to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days. I became a victim of debt bondage.
So this is the Shine the Light exhibit where part of my story, along with some of my survivor sibling stories are. So when you walk in here, what you're really seeing is just us kind of briefly talking about what we've been through in small snippets, and then also how we exited from our trafficking situations. The pitch sounded really great, right? 2 paid vacations a year, hotel and transportation paid for, and you get to see the whole country. It was like the real world minus the cameras.
My trafficker never ever called me Harold. He used to always snap his finger like this and tell me, hey, illegal, come here. So my nickname was illegal. So every time, so what happens? That totally demolishes your self-esteem. And what happened in my mind, body, and soul, I thought I'm a criminal. And that is why people just are very scared.
You only got 20 bucks a day to live off of, and maybe 50 to 100 bucks on the weekend if you made any money, which not a lot of the times did you. And sometimes we would travel 12 to 15 hours and be expected to work when we got there. And sometimes it didn't matter if there was a blizzard out. If you didn't have any sales, they would keep you out till 10 o'clock at night in hopes that you would get one. And if you didn't, you got the 3rd degree. You were yelled at and cussed at and told how horrible of a person you were.
So they're put in the mental prison of the trafficker, and the trafficker takes so many emotional blackmails. You do anything, your mother is gone, your father is gone, your kids are gone. There are so many strings attached.
I stayed in that on and off for the better part of 7 years, through a pregnancy, through marrying some random guy because I had concluded that no one was going to want me and that I wasn't suitable for anything but to be abused or used for somebody else's gain. This one here is mine. This is me talking a little bit about my story and what happened. It's very surreal to see this and to recount that memory. I went off the grid. I left everything I owned. I contacted my landlord and I said, hey, this is what I have going on and I have to leave and I'm not safe here. My trafficking, my exploitation, all of those experiences spanned from ages 3 to 32. Labor trafficking was, just this portion of it, but I really managed to nail almost every other intersection that you can when it comes to human trafficking.
It took me 133 months to get my freedom. Understand, friends, 133 months. Whenever you meet a victim or a survivor anywhere in the world, they get abused every minute, every hour, every day, every week, every month and year. So it sticks to them. And that is why I've seen so many victims and survivors, commit suicide. We got to fight. All long journeys start with a small step. If I can do it, you can definitely do it. I started creating awareness. I want to be the voice for the voiceless victims. So that is my passion in life.
For me, there's been this lovely process of really learning my identity and really being able to retake ownership and agency of the things that happened to me and utilize those to help others in similar situations like mine. Also to educate communities and different systems that we all function within about what they're missing.
There are other examples of what modern slavery could look like. What we've seen over the last 50 years is more and more this concentration and focus on profit. We've seen manufacturing, that hand to land, hand to product. It's all been outsourced in pursuit of the cheapest labor possible to maximize profit. That is slavery by another name. And when we talk about the United States as being the most brutal form of capitalism, it is because it started from the most brutal means by which we approach labor. And so all of us are participating in this slave economy, whether that was in 1842 or 2025.
One of the major objectives of the Freedom Center is to inspire action.
It gives people a place to go to find answers. Good, bad, or ugly, history happened. It needs to be reported as it happened, and you learn and you glean.
When I came here, I thought this place was a healing. How can we make America better? How can we make it what we say it is, a land that's free for all?
Even in times that we're living in where times are very contested, we can harken back to history and remind ourselves of what we're doing about the larger human project.
And it's so important that a center like the Freedom Center provides that training, that education, that safe space so that we can begin to grow that next generation.
They need to feel that authentic place to be inspired, to take action, and to join in the movement for social justice.
I consider myself an activist. I want to see more of my friends and more younger people being able to give back to the community and realize their rights.
I realized that my community and I were part of history, and history will hold us accountable for our silence or our action. And so I felt that the Freedom Center was a way to pass on the torch.
I brought something with me, so it's kind of like show and tell style. This is from the groundbreaking back in 2002. So I was 2 years old. It's a torch. It's that iconography that you see all over this museum. Freedom's flame. We found it in my grandmother's house. She passed away about a year ago. But I'd like to think that it was present all along. When I go back and look, it's like that spark was present in my family the entire time. And it still lights up. Even when it seems like we're going backwards.
There's always been a cycle of backlash in any advance of social justice.
It will feel like we're taking 2 steps forward and then getting pushed back. But it's important to remember that we always arrive ahead of where we started.
We still need your vision. We need your energy. We need your voice. You inherit tomorrow.
Like Frederick Douglass said, you got to agitate, 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 or take inspiration from people who said, you know what, this is going to be a long struggle, but it's a struggle worth doing.
Don't be overwhelmed. Don't let anything get in the way of taking that first step.
Continue to show up, to protest, to hold people accountable. It's working.
Dr. King said, I may not make it to the finish line with you, but we're going to make it. That's what the flame reminds me of. It's still going. I think it's a huge cause we're fighting for, and it's a huge cause that the museum is still fighting for.